The Battle of Salamis was probably one of the most important battles in history. Not only did it shape the future of Greece, it shaped the future for modern mankind. Greece is a southeastern European country, especially well known for their ancient times. The reason why this battle was so important for Greece was because they had heavily influenced Western civilizations, especially their political structure. So, obviously, the Greeks were pretty important for the world, but it almost could have been destroyed. Every document, art piece, ship, everything. The world could have been a different place. How could have everything been destroyed? Well, a country named Persia started to invade multiple parts of Europe. The Persian Empire began their spree in around 610 BCE. At one point, they tried to invade Greece, but something unexpected happened. The Greeks resisted, but they were able to fend off the Persians. Thus, the Greco-Persian War started. The Greeks were not slow to attain the knowledge that the Persians were planning an attack soon. A man by the name of Themistocles had planned years before that the Greeks were about to get attacked, so he had acquired more triremes, which were ships, to the Greek fleet. Triremes were ships that could easily zigzag and turn, but the only bad thing about them was that they could only operate in calm waters. This would be very important for the war. Fast forward a couple years later, and things weren't looking good for Greece. They were in big trouble after their defeat during the Battle of Thermopylae and the indecisive Battle of Artemisium. The Battle of Thermopylae was a devastating tragedy for Greece. King Leonidas, from Greece, led his troops into war. The battle went on until the Greek fleet became torn apart. The Battle of Artemisium happened actually at the same time as the Battle of Thermopylae, and nothing that bad really happened. But the reason why the Greeks lost that war was because they had retreated after learning about the loss of Thermopylae. The Persians were invading city-states left and right, and were not intending to stop. When the Battle of Artemisium was over, the Greeks regrouped in a city-state named Salamis. There, they planned an attack on Persia once they sailed through the Gulf of Corinth. Themistocles had realized that the Persians would never think that the Greeks wanted to fight in closed waters, because Greeks usually enjoyed fighting in more open waters. So, he chose to fight in the nearby straits of Salamis. Some parts of the bay and the straits were very narrow. Some parts were even 1/4 of a mile wide. Also, since the Persians would be coming through the narrow straits of Salamis, Greek ships could be more prepared for the narrow straits and get into a position where they could easily move around. Also, the terrain of the straits had made it so the Greeks could easily spot the Persian ships as they got into position. All of these would add up to be a great battlefield for the Greeks, and not so much for the Persians. Themistocles also sent false messages to the pro-Persian Greek city-states. This would eventually end up in the pro-Persian states sending ships over to Salamis, intending that the Persians would use those, but the Greeks would take over and steal the ships. This defection would actually turn out to be very important for the Greeks. Unfortunately, this did only happen twice, but one of those two ships had told the Greeks that the Persians were trying to block in their fleet. Now this was what the Greeks had needed. They had finally found the information about what the Persians were going to do. Now that Greece had compiled all the information about the Persians and knew what they were going to do, it was go time. The Persians later moved their ships into position overnight, hoping that the Greeks wouldn't notice them. At dawn, Persia attacked the Greeks, which was a fatal move. As the Persians moved in, the narrow straits forced them to move their ships closer and closer together. Eventually, all the ships were out of the order they were supposed to be in, and no one knew what to do except for going forward. Then, finally, Greek ships were spotted in a long curved line. The Persians kept charging towards the Greeks even though their ships were still getting closer together. Ships started to now ram into each other. And since all of them were close to each other, armed soldiers could jump on another ship and start attacking the crew. More and more men started to drown, mainly the Persians because most Greeks knew how to swim. With more space, Greeks could ram into ships and withdraw quickly, causing even more havoc for the Persians. Finally, the Persians were forced to retreat. During the withdrawal, some Persian ships rammed other allies. Overall, even though the Greeks had lost some ships, this was a major turning point for them. The loss of ships on each side in the Battle of Salamis wasn't really made known too well, but it was estimated that the Greeks had lost a total of 40 ships, while the Persians lost a staggering 200 ships during the battle. Also, Xerxes, the leader of the Persians, had left some men on the island of Satalia, hoping that they would go to some use during the war. It didn't really work out as intended, and after Persia's defeat, the Greeks stormed to the island and slaughtered the troops. Soon after, Xerxes returned home. He left a Persian general and a sizable army in charge of the invasion of Salamis. Now, from then on, nothing really that bad happened near Salamis, probably because of how much the Greeks had socked them in the battle. The Persians still owned most of the Greek city-states, but the Battle of Salamis made Greece realize that they had a chance at winning the Persian War. Soon after, the war had ended, and the winners were the Greeks. Persia had kept making little mistakes, such as too much confidence, and the Greeks pulled out. Shortly after the war ended, Themistocles and other Athenians returned to their homes. Themistocles was hailed a hero by many people in Greece for his strategy during the war. The Greeks later experienced the classical period. This period was when scientists and artists had started to progress in their projects and also their lives. Even though Greece had won the Persian War, their country still wasn't perfect. Shortly after their victory, Sparta and Athens, two city-states in Greece, started attacking each other. This battle would end up being named the Peloponnesian War. The Battle of Salamis could also be compared with some recent topics, such as the Holocaust. Nazis had been trying to ruin everything about Jewish life and hopefully demolish it. Even though there had been quite a difference between each side, Nazis were still crushing them. Finally, when other people banded together, such as America and Britain, they were able to take down the Nazis. This is much like how parts of Greece had to band together during the Battle of Salamis and defeat Persia. In conclusion, Greece had gained the knowledge that using strategy, determination, and quick thinking, they can turn a tragedy into a triumph.